In today's video, we're going to be making this notebook right here. Let's get started. Alright, before we get into this build, I want to go over a couple things that make this pattern unique. So, got a couple pockets here, and then we also have a pen slot that is fully concealed on the inside of the notepad. It's not out here dangling on the outside so your pen could get lost. You have a fully removable notepad. Inside you have a little picture window so you can personalize it if you would like to. Then we also have another notepad, so that way you can keep your notes separate. Got one for school, one for work, however you want to separate it, but it's definitely useful to have multiple notepads. I even went out of my way to make sure that not just slim pens fit, but if you're one of those big chunky mechanical pencil type people, it'll fit just fine. And then also, this pen, not only is it bigger, but it has a higher clip on it, so it wants to sit up quite a bit higher. This works as well. So, should work out pretty well for you. I'm excited to see you guys, follow along and make one as well. Let's jump right into the pattern. So, a couple things with this pattern before we get started. Right here, this is your size guide. So basically, if you just take a debit card or a credit card like this is just a blank card, but if you just take it and you line it up right there, you have the right size. Or I have the measurements right there if you just want to measure it if you don't always have a card with you. But your printer is probably going to want to default to a smaller size. So just make sure it's set at actual size. A couple spots like this you'll see along the little X's mean that those get cut out. There are a couple dashed lines right here. It says mark all 6 dashed lines with an all for alignment purposes. So I personally don't like to use the pre-marked punch holes. I like to use my pricking irons. So I'm not going to use those for this pattern, but they're there if you want to use them. And then also, there's some little indicators telling you where to skive. So all the way around this piece is going to need to be skived. Not very many pieces need to be skived, but they are pointed out. These 2 holes I want to punch out later because I have half round punches and I'm going to use circle punches in the corners. So right here, this is where it gets tricky as well. So these 2 pages, they're actually going to be laid over each other and set on there just like that. So what we need to do is I need to actually cut out this one first and then lay it over top. So this tab is going to line up with that tab right there. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that real quick. Line up right here, line up right there. Tape it together. I'm gonna wait and do this one and this one until I do it with a hole punch, and then also these as well. Take note, right here it says skive backside, so this shaded section, we're not going to do any cutting on the pattern with that. That's just a note so that when we're working on it, you remember to do that. These are not the same size. So right here, we have page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4. So it's very important to make sure that you put them in the right orientation, because if you don't, pages are all different lengths, because when they're in the book like this, these outside pages need to be a little bit longer and this one needs to be a little bit shorter so that when you close it, they all line up even. So when I'm putting my pattern pieces on, I always tape them down. There's probably a better way to do it, but It's easy. I want to punch out the holes first, and then, because after I cut out the outside, the pattern is going to fall off. So I'm going to punch out the holes. Okay, with these ones, remember, we're not doing anything with the shaded section. We're only going to punch holes in the corners here. So now that I got my holes punched in, I'm not going to cut these right now. I'm going to wait until I peel the pattern off so that way I can see exactly where the lines are and just match them up with a ruler. Okay, so I got to mark all my dash marks on this for the other piece, and then I got to mark where this is going to go on the other panel as well. So all right, and now I'll be back when it's all done. This piece on the pattern, it originally said to skive all the way around the edge, but what I like to do is I like to just flip it over, take the piece I cut out of the center of the other ones, just kind of line it up like this, and that gives me a really good idea as to where it needs to be cut off. Yeah, sorry about my cat. He really wants me to throw his ball for him. He plays fetch a lot. Like, non-stop begs us to play fetch with him. This piece also needs to be skived. But remember, we're putting a card in here, a 4x6 picture. If you're not gonna put a picture in here, then there's no point in putting these holes in it. But we're gonna skive these outside corners, and that just helps it be a little bit more smooth. Because if you don't, and then you put a picture under there, you can actually feel these edges underneath the notepad on almost every single page that you write on. So if you're putting these holes in, definitely make sure you skive these two sections. Alright, so quick recap. So I beveled and burnished in here, and then also in these slots, but not on the side that I skived on the back side. But on the side that I skived, I also burnished in there. Did that on both of them. But I have not beveled this yet, because after we stitch that, we're going to do both of those together. Okay, in this, I beveled and burnished in here, and I also burnished right here where that pen's going to slide, and then skived all the way around right there. Now, what I'm going to do, both of the insides of the pockets, I'm going to burnish the inside. So, yeah, let's go ahead and do that real quick. Okay, so with this pocket, you're just going to lay it right over the bigger pocket, and you're going to line it up with the marks that we made earlier when we were making the pattern, and then we're just going to take our awl, just go around the edge. Okay, now we pull this off, and now we can see the shape of our pocket. Take my rougher tool. You can just scratch up the surface if you want. Just this way we can glue our pocket down. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and glue around our pocket. All right, now that the glue is done drying, go ahead and stick them together. Okay. Now we want to get these two panels right here. This is actually pretty important. So this one right here, this is the first one. Like when you open it up, it's going to be like the first page. And it has the picture slots. So, and that is going to butt up right up against this side. So we want to take these two sides, keep them together, go like this. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to glue around this right here. And then we're going to want to glue around the outside right here. But we don't want to glue anywhere in the middle because that is where the back of the notepad is going to have to slide through. So just make sure you keep it maybe about a quarter of an inch on both sides, and you should be good. Okay, now that these are dry, go ahead and stick these together. Make sure you line them up pretty good. As soon as they touch, they're going to stick. Alright, I'm just going to go ahead and sand in here a little bit before I put my stitch line down. Alright, if you're using stitching chisels, like I'm going to be using, what I'm doing just to get my spacing, because there needs to be like a little bit of space in between, like a little triangle, so when it's folding over, the stitching isn't too close. Basically, I'm just going to put something in there. Quarter of an inch would probably be fine, but this is probably about 3/8 of an inch wide. And I'm just going to go ahead and put a little mark on either side. Transfer that all the way up to the top. And I know this mark it's not perfect, but that way I have an even starting point on top and bottom. So now I'm going to take and I'm going to mark my line from that mark that I just made all the way around. Alright, so we're about to put this on, and this is where it gets a little tricky. So, before I actually put this on, I want to connect those marks that I made earlier. If I can find my tool. There we go. Okay, so those marks that were on the pattern earlier, right there. So I'm just going to go ahead and connect them. This is marking where the edge of our material is going to be for the glue up. And you don't necessarily have to do this. You can kind of just roughly do it, but I have fancy little circle tools. So I'm going to use them. Let's do the glue up. In this next step, it's very critical that we have perfect alignment. What we're doing here is we're covering half of it with a piece of paper so that our glue doesn't stick to the other half too early. We're lining it up perfectly. Now we're going to stretch the leather back over to our other mark, line it up, and press it down. Okay, so now we're ready to glue the inside to the outside piece. You see I labeled this right here. It does get kind of confusing when you can't see where your logo's at. So I just put that on the back on the bottom. So, and I know this is my back piece right here. So you open it. So that's my back piece. And this piece is quite a bit longer, so you can't just like lay it down. You have to do one half and then fold the other half over and do it that way. So, just gonna go ahead. Okay, so now, just gonna make sure that I line that up over there. I'm gonna keep my hands between here because I don't want these two to stick. And I'm just gonna try to line up these edges. Okay, now that we have both of those glued on, I'm gonna wait a second before I stitch it. But I want to go ahead and get this all marked out. So I'm gonna go ahead, line this up, just like so. And I'm gonna do this one a little bit different than your normal, I don't know, wallet pocket. So I'm gonna come right here, right where the curve is, and I'm gonna go underneath it and go ahead and put a line. Do the same thing on the other side. And the reason for that is when you look at this stitch right here, so this is one continuous stitch. I started right here, came all the way under, and I went underneath, wrapped it around, and kept going. So I want to show you guys how I did that. Okay, so to start stitching on this side, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark all the way down to this crease, and then I'm going to mark all the way down to this crease, because I want to make sure that I don't put my pricking iron right over the top of that and cut that. This side, not so bad because it's going the same angle, but this side, it would pretty much put a cut right through it the opposite direction. So I'll show you what to do when I get to that point. Alright, so right here, I didn't punch right there because that's gonna kind of cut the flap right there. So if you look right here, it looks like if it'll focus, it looks like it's missing. Okay, yeah, you can see that. So it looks like it's missing one. So I'm going to take my single one, and instead of going the same direction, I'm going to mark it perpendicular. Okay. So I'll just come down here and make that mark. Don't really want to go all the way through. That is what this is for. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to go through at an angle so that it comes out on that side, just like that. Okay, so now that we're right here, So now that we're right here, the next thing that we would normally do would be to go over top to that next hole, right? But I'm actually going to do the opposite. Is I'm going to go peel this back a little bit, find that hole, stick my needle through that hole, and that is how I'm going to get that underneath look right there. Okay, and then let me stick this other one back through. But this one is now going to come all the way through. Okay, so that first one went underneath and through. The one from the back side is coming through all 3 layers. Okay, now that I've done that, I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go over the top and through the back. Same thing with the other one, go over the top, through all the layers. I like to wait until they're all kind of finding their own groove before I start tightening them. That way they're not twisted or overlapping, they just kind of sit right next to each other. Oh yeah, something I didn't point out. The top edge here, the top edge right here is already beveled and burnished. On both sides, make sure you bevel and burnish before you do it. All right, so now I've made it all the way back around to this other side. So what I want to do is I'm going to go through initially like I would on the other side. Like I'm going to go through initially just like I would if I was doing another stitch. Okay, but now I'm going to take this one, I'm going to go over the top. But I'm going to stick it out. I'm not going to go through the hole. I'm going to go out. And then this other one, I'm going to go over the top and then all the way through. Okay, and then remember this next one was the one where we went through at an angle. So now I got to stick my needle through at that same angle. Stick it all the way through here. And then just finish it out like normal. Hey guys, before I show you the finished product, I'd really like to remind you that I do have a link for this pattern down in the description down below. And if you guys are interested in making it, I'd really appreciate it if you tag me over on Facebook or Instagram. I'd really be interested in what you guys are making and how you edit or change this pattern. But yeah, let's get into the final shots.